Anya sat on the bench, surrounded by her friends, clapping her stubbed sandals on her dirty heel. They had run to the river again, and then walked along the hot road home, holding their shoes in their hands and waving them from side to side to dry. They had been forbidden to go there ever since Aliona, Mishka Yeremeyev's wife, had failed to cope with the current and drowned. The river seemed to be small, but they had been saying about it for a long time. A cursed place. How many people it had killed. Yulka took a handful of seeds out of her pocket and scattered them in her palms. They threw the husks right under the bench, even though Baba Tasya scolded them 100 times for it. But Anya didn't care. In a month she and her parents were moving to the city, and there would be no more Baba Tasya, no more cow cakes in front of the fence, no more street toilets. Anya would be a city girl. The boys with red peeling noses, unused to the summer sun, sloppy and seemingly indifferent, came up. "Shall we go to the river?" asks Borka. "We've already been there," replies the brown-eyed Nastya lazily. She has dimples on her cheeks, and when she smiles, Borka always blushes. Anya glanced at Vovchik, wondering whether he would dare to say anything to her or not. For a whole year they've been playing this game of staring at each other. They're tired of it. Nastya, who had guessed her thoughts, suddenly says loudly, "Anka, which of them would you marry if you stayed in the village?" Vovka casts a quick glance at her, and Anya involuntarily blushes. She wants to hit her malicious friend in the side, but she restrains herself. Instead, she frantically searches for an answer, looking around as if, like in a biology class, someone could give her a clue. On the opposite side of the column, Mishka Yeremiev is drawing 2 buckets of water. His face is covered with reddish stubble, one trouser leg is torn, his hair branches and covers his eyes. Even a cap doesn't help. "Yes, to Mishka," suddenly Anya answers, happy that she has found such an elegant move. Mishka, hearing his name, turns round. "Uncle Mishka," shouts Nastya to him, though he is only 10 years older. "Will you marry Anya when she grows up?" From these words of Nastya, Anya suddenly becomes embarrassed. Everyone knows that since he was widowed, he does not look at anyone in the village, and does not look at anyone. He pines. He cannot forget his Alina. But Misha suddenly smiles and joins in their game, as if he realizes that Anya must be rescued. And why not? "I'll take her. She's a serious girl, not like you." Nastya takes offense and pouts her plump lips. Anya, on the other hand, gets a kind of excitement and shouts cheerfully, "Don't forget. Wait for me, do you hear?" Misha nods, winks at her, takes the buckets of water and leaves. Borka laughs, Lenka and Nastya echo him, but Vovchik stands serious, tapping his shoe on a stone sticking out of the ground. During the whole month Vovka does nothing, and Anya realizes that that's it. They will have nothing. She will leave, and never see Vovka again. These thoughts make her nose tickle, and Anya is angry with herself, with Vovka, with her parents who are taking her away from here, away. On the eve of departure, when Anya picks the last raspberries from the bushes and puts them in her mouth, trying to remember this sweet taste of her childhood, of her summer, of a life that will never be repeated, Vovka's face appears between the bars of the fence. Her chest grows hot, her voice disappears somewhere. Vovka holds out his clenched palm, opens it. There is a coin with a neat hole in it. The coin is unusual, Anya has never seen such coins. "What is it?" she asks in a hoarse whisper. "My brother brought it back from the expedition. It's an ancient coin, he stole it for me. And this is for you, as a souvenir." Anya looks him straight in the eyes, usually so clear and blue, but now because of dilated pupils almost black. "Thank you," she says, and takes the coin. A thin rope is threaded through the hole and she slips it around her neck. The coin hangs just below her collarbones. It still retains the warmth of his palm, and her touch gives Anya a chill for some reason. They are silent for a long time. Then Anya speaks. "I have nothing for you." She looks round helplessly, and then she guesses. She picks berries in her palm and gives them to Vovka. He takes the berry but does not eat it himself, but brings it to Anya's lips, and she eats the berry, feeling the light touch of his fingers. Her heart is pounding like mad. Will you write me letters? He asks. I will. Anya is happy and angry at herself that she didn't realize it. Since then, the taste of raspberries has become for her the taste of their unspoken promise to remember each other. They corresponded for a long time. At first tentatively and dryly, then, on the contrary, frankly exchanging vows and confessions. And in her senior year, Anya fell in love. Really, in a boy from the course, where she went, preparing for exams in architecture. And she couldn't tell Vovchik about it. She stopped writing to him and put his letters in her nightstand without even printing them out. But she never forgot him, and still wore the coin as a talisman that protected her from various misfortunes. It really helped. With it she passed her exams and entered the institute. She wore it on the days of difficult exams and dangerous night walks. It had never let her down, and maybe it was because she'd forgotten it at home that all this had happened to her. They had been seeing Michael for 2 months. First they went to dinner at a cafe. Then they went to the tiny flat he rented not far from the park, where they walked later in the light summer gloom. Somehow, Anya was sure that he was here for a long time, and now, having met her, forever. But on one of these evenings Michael was especially tender and romantic, and then he said, "Baby, I'm going back to New York tomorrow." Those words stunned Anya. She remembered her grandmother saying, "Your words make a hole in my heart." It turns out that Grandma was right. Holes do appear in the heart. Anya even pressed her hand to her chest. It seemed to her that life was leaving her in thin streams. And 2 weeks later she realized she was pregnant when, for the 3rd day in a row, breakfast was not accepted by her stomach. And she went to take a test in the smoky toilet of the hostel, where she came to her friend Sveta, who always had a test in stock. The word abortion frightened her more than expulsion from the institute and her mother's scolding. When she was about 7 years old, she heard her mother discussing the procedure in detail with her grandmother, who called it a sin, and her mother argued that it was not a sin, and the baby's heart was not beating yet. And Anya knew that it was beating. They were shown the film in high school. That's why she would never kill her baby. Mum was furious. "You've got a year to finish school." A year. How much money we've poured into you. Do you have any idea? "I'll finish my studies," Anya said in a thin, childlike voice. But her mother interrupted her, asking who would take care of the child while she was studying. Dad left them 2 years ago, and Mum had to get a second job to survive on her own with 3 children. When Mum found out the baby was Michael's, her mouth turned into a thin line and she hissed, "I'll make you an appointment with the doctor tomorrow." Anya collapsed on her bed, trying to muffle her sobs with a pillow. When her hand touched something round, she instantly knew it was a talisman. She pulled it out, put it on, wiped her wet eyes with the back of her hand. Suddenly she realized what she had to do. She would go to Vovka, to her Vovka, to whom she had promised that they would be together and married as soon as she turned 18. Yes, she was a little late, but maybe he was still waiting for her. In the back of her mind she realized that it was stupid, a childish whim. Who would wait for her for so many years? But if she stayed with her mum now, she didn't know whether she would be able to save this child. Early in the morning, while her mother was still asleep, Anya slipped out of the flat and went to the railway station, where she bought a ticket to the village she hadn't been to for 7 years. Anya was surprised to see how everything had changed here. She thought she would see ruin and desolation, as such pictures are shown in the news. But no, she didn't recognize her native village. Before, every 2 or 3 houses had been a derelict wreck, but now there were new ones with foreign cars parked in their place. The windows shone with plastic whiteness, and there was even a satellite dish on one roof. Walking through the familiar yet unfamiliar streets, she lost her former confidence. What was she even doing here? She didn't seriously think Vova remembered her all these years ago, did she? And what if he did? Would he take her in with someone else's child? Not to mention the fact that she just doesn't like him. She wanted to turn back, but then she realized that she didn't know the bus schedule back, and the train was in the other direction, and she didn't know its schedule either. At a loss, she stood in the middle of the road, not knowing what to do next. Anyuta. Thinking about the mistake she had made, Anya did not notice someone approaching her. Turning round, she saw Vova's aunt, and it flashed through her mind. Is it really so? Aunt Liza! What are you doing here? No reason, I wanted to go back to my homeland to see. Here everything has changed so much. It's nice, isn't it? It's Mishka Yeremayev, remember him? Mishka? Anya was surprised. Why are we standing on the road? Come to our house, I'll give you tea and tell you all about it. What a bride you've grown up to be. And Vovchik is a bachelor. She winked, and Anya blushed like a schoolgirl, and Aunt Liza laughed. While they were drinking tea, she told Anya that Mishka Yeremeyev, whose wife had drowned, had decided to become a farmer. And somehow his business had gone so well, especially in the last 2 years, that half the village worked for him. And Vovchik too, said Aunt Liza. He's called a forwarding driver, and he takes food to the city. One shop there takes both meat and milk for sale. In general, Mishka even works with factories, but with private people too. Then she asked Anya about her and her parents, and Anya told everything except the story with Michael. His name alone, even uttered to herself, gave her heart a sharp pain. Why don't you eat pies? Are you saving your figure? Our girls are all on diets too, skin and bones. The smell of those cakes made Anya feel sick, and she was afraid she would have to run to the toilet, so she only sipped her tea. She realized that she had to go home. She had nothing to do here, but she had no strength to get up from the chair. Her morning determination had evaporated somewhere, and she saw no way out. Anyut, you're on holiday now, aren't you? Aunt Lisa asked. Well, yes. Holidays. So, maybe you'll come and stay with us. Nastya's getting married in a week, so you'll have a wedding party. To Boris? Why to Borka? Aunt Liza was surprised. To Mishka. Strange, but only then Anya remembered that one hot summer day this same Mishka Yeremeyev had promised to marry her. And although it was a joke, Anya for some reason became offended. No, I'm going home, replied Anya, and then she remembered her mother's words about the doctor. It's a pity, and I only hoped that you would help me. Help you? Sanka was left for the autumn. He doesn't want to study at all, the rascal. And Vovka's no use either. He only knows how to turn a steering wheel. And the eldest lives in the city, just like you. He's become a scientist. Anya sighed. In fact, she would gladly stay here. Maybe her mother would calm down in time and forget about this terrible doctor. Stay, Anya. And I'm not interfering? You'll help. And how happy everyone will be to see you. Anya even squared her shoulders. It was so easy to breathe. She was a little nervous about meeting Vova, so she decided to go to meet her school friends. She came back in the evening, and the first thing she saw was an unfamiliar shaved nape. He turned around, and from his face Anya suddenly realized he didn't know anything. She had thought Aunt Lisa had told him. I told you. A surprise. Aunt Liza laughed, and Vova was so comical that Anya couldn't stand it and laughed. This somehow at once removed all the tension and uncertainty, and in 5 minutes they were chatting away, sharing everything that had accumulated over the years. After dinner, Aunt Liza came up to Anya and whispered, You should call your mum, or she'll lose it. Anya didn't even think about it. She didn't want to talk to her mum now, but what can you do? She dialed her home number and told her that she had gone to a friend's wedding and that she shouldn't lose her. Without waiting for an answer, she hung up. It was such a wonderful week that Anya never once even cried for her broken heart. During the day she was studying with Sanya, who was a student of 2, and in the evening she met with Nastya and Lina. She also talked to Vovchik all the time. They pretended that there was not between them that hot correspondence. There were no promises of marriage, but at the same time with whom, and never Anna was not so easy. Vova drove her to the wedding, and not only helped her choose a dress, but also paid for it. Let me give you this present, because your birthday is coming up. It was true, her birthday was in a month, and she did not argue with Vova. She saw how his eyes were burning. In one of their conversations, Anya asked, Why didn't you go to study further? You wanted to be an architect, to build houses, didn't you? You say architect too. Vova grinned wryly. There's such a competition. And anyway, how am I going to leave my aunt? She raised us with my brother, and I'm going to leave her alone with Sanyok. Well, she's not an invalid or helpless. What, she can't live without you? It's easy for you to say you live with your mum, said Vovka. Anna wanted to say that her life was not so easy, but she kept silent. The wedding was beautiful. The guests were cheerful. The bride and groom were handsome. The table was rich. Anya danced in her new dress, but she ate almost nothing. She was still groggy. Oh, who do I see? Said the groom, holding out a glass to Anya. Well, I'm sorry, I almost didn't wait for you. Anya smiled, took the glass, but did not drink. Vovka, who had apparently forgotten that conversation, frowned and stood closer to Anya, as if to let her know that there was someone to take care of her. Yes, you promised to wait, Anya said jokingly. But maybe you'll drink to us? Anya didn't argue and took a small sip of champagne. You are offended, Misha stretched out. For young people should drink to the bottom. Or are you pregnant? He glanced at her flat stomach, and Anya involuntarily covered it with her hand and blushed. Why would you think that? She mumbled. Well, I'll go and look for Lena. She hurried outside. It was suddenly very stuffy in the dining room. Standing on the porch, she inhaled the humid summer air. A thunderstorm had recently passed, and swallowed her tears. Anya, it was Vovchik who jumped out next. Is it true? Are you pregnant? It was disgusting to lie to him. In fact, she'd been trying to tell him all week, but couldn't find the words. It's true. She lowered her head so she couldn't see his eyes. And who's the father? Who cares? He's gone anyway. Is he dead? Vova was confused. You could say that, said Anya gloomily. I'm sorry, I don't feel well. I'll pack my things and go home tomorrow. Let me walk you home. Don't, Vova. Go have fun. Without once looking him in the eye, Anya turned round and went. Anya didn't have many things, so she packed them quickly. Aunt Liza persuaded her to stay longer, but Anya thought of urgent family matters that could not be postponed. I thought you and Vova were going to work out, she confessed. He remembered you all the time. He read your letters all the time. Anya remembered the stack of letters from Vova, which she had never read because of her cowardice. It's impossible, said Anya quietly. You say impossible too, snorted Aunt Liza. You two are cooing like lovebirds all day long. Anya could have lied, but there was no better argument than the truth. I'm pregnant, Anya said. Aunt Lisa didn't even seem surprised. I understood that you didn't come here for nothing. Did you have a fight? It was easier to lie. Something like that. Aunt Lisa sighed but stopped asking questions. Anya slept badly. She kept listening to see if Vova was back, but he wasn't back till morning. Apparently he'd been out on a bender at the wedding. And rightly so, she had decided to stay here for nothing. In the morning, sleep finally fell on Anya, and she dreamed of Michael, who was flying through the air on a sailboat and waving to her, flashing his white-toothed smile. Because of this dream, she almost slept through the morning bus, and Aunt Liza woke her up, groaning and apologizing for not keeping track of the time. Sanka, the rascal, had broken the alarm clock. Without even having breakfast, Anya ran to the bus stop and managed to run into the closing doors. The jars with jam were ringing in her bag. Aunt Liza had given them to her as a present, saying hello to her mum. When the bus was dusting down the country road, Anya suddenly remembered that her talisman had been left under her pillow. Her first thought was to ask her to stop immediately and run back. How could she be without her talisman? And Vovka, if he found it, would definitely think that she had left it on purpose, as if she had said goodbye forever. And Anya did not want to say goodbye to him at all. Something unspoken remained between them, as if fate had given them a second chance. But they had missed it. But Anya didn't even move from her seat. How would she get back on foot? And what would she tell Aunt Lisa? Would she understand what this talisman meant to her? She closed her eyes and remembered Vovka's huge dark eyes, the handful of raspberries in her palm, and the heavy coin that still retained the warmth of his hand. How long ago it had been, as if in another life. Anya pressed her wet cheek against the glass and thought for the first time. And maybe Mum was right. Why does she need this child? Only troubles from him. And if he didn't exist, she could come to Vovka's house again and try everything again, because in fairy tales, heroes do everything the third time. Contrary to expectations, her mother met her not with scolding and reproaches, but with tears and hugs. "I thought you wouldn't come back at all," she confessed. "Where have you been this week? I almost went mad. You can't disappear like that." "Well, you'll soon realize what it's like." Anya looked at her mum incredulously. What is she talking about? "Realize what?" she clarified just in case. "You know what?" Mum grumbled. "I'm not the one who's pregnant." She had thought that her mum was going to insist and that she should just go with the flow and listen to her. But it turned out like this. Anya couldn't understand whether she was happy about this change in her mother's attitude or not, because leaving the child meant saying goodbye to Vovka forever. But at the same time, a joy unknown to her before sprang up in her. She clearly imagined a baby in her arms, and this thought warmed her, filling her with new vague feelings. For several days, she walked round Vova's letters. She took them out of the bedside table, went through them in her hands, put them under her pillow, but did not dare to open and read them. One day Mum said, "I've made an appointment for you to see a doctor." Anya's heart dropped. Again? Yesterday her mother had brought her some fruit to give her more vitamins, and today she was talking about the doctor. "Silly," her mother said tiredly, having read all her thoughts on Anya's face. "You need to register, to do tests." Anya exhaled. "I didn't even think about it," she admitted. Mum rolled her eyes. "Yes, a child is lucky to have a mum." Anya threw herself on her mum's neck and said, "The main thing is that I'm lucky to have a mum. I love you so much." Mum waved her tears away, awkwardly wiping them away. And Anya suddenly found the strength to go and read the letters from Vova, carefully printing each envelope and unfolding the double sheets of notebook paper. She thought she would cry when she read them, but no. She smiled, and it felt so good, as if he was there to tell her all those stories. And only on the last letter, where he confessed that he had come to town to check if she was all right. Maybe she was in hospital. That's why she didn't answer him. Anya let a tear fall. On the day when she and her mother went to the doctor, Anya was nervous. Today she wanted to take her talisman with her more than ever before. For some reason she was anxious, as if a black cloud was hanging over her. Even her mother noticed it, but wrote it off as natural excitement. Anya didn't tell her mum that her stomach had been hurting for 2 days already. She didn't know if it was like that for pregnant women or not, but it seemed to her that it shouldn't be like that. It was not for nothing that Anya was worried. The doctor said that she had a high tonus, and it was a good idea to go to hospital. "You can also lie at home if it does not get worse, but just lie down," said the doctor. "No exertion. Do you understand?" "I understand," Anya replied fearfully, and her mother squeezed her hand tightly. They took a taxi home. Both of them kept silent, avoiding looking into each other's eyes. Anya was afraid that Mum would say something like, "Maybe it's better this way," and what Mum was afraid of, Anya didn't know. Her hand kept reaching for the spot where the coin usually dangled, but it wasn't there anymore. By the time they arrived at the house, Anya could hardly hold back her tears, so she almost ran to the entrance, so she didn't notice the man who had been waiting for her on the bench for an hour. "Anya!" She turned round, still not believing that she was about to see him. "Vovka!" They looked at each other in silence, and Mum looked at them. "Okay, I'm off. You've got the keys. Don't forget that you're on bed rest," Mum said, and went into the entrance. It was as if Anya and Vova didn't even notice it. "You forgot your talisman," he said, and held out his palm, on which lay such a familiar moment. These words made Anya feel so easy. How good it was that he realized that she had not done it on purpose. Anya took the coin, checked the lanyard, hung it in its familiar place. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I know your address by heart, remember?" Anya even laughed. "I'm so stupid." "That's right," Vova smiled, but immediately became serious and asked, "Anya, can I ask, are you in a relationship now? Because if I am, I'd better leave right away, but if not—" "Vova, I'm having a baby. I've already realized that. I don't care." Anya didn't know how to tell him the truth. Maybe not to tell him later when it's too late. No, you can't do that. You can't start by deceiving him. "Vova," she squeezed her eyes shut and blurted out, "his father is dark-skinned." Vova was silent for a long time, so much so that Anya even opened her eyes. He looked at her surprised but calmly. "And where is he?" "In America." "Do you love him?" "Probably not anymore." "Probably." "Yes." They were silent for a while. And then Vovka said, "Let's go to the flat, you look pale. Why are you on bed rest, by the way? The tone is high." Vova frowned. "Is it dangerous?" Anya shrugged her shoulders, touched the coin. "I hope it's not now." "Let's go." He took her hand. "Do you think your mother recognized me?" "I don't think so," Anya decided. "Well then she will." The coin was warm and smelled of raspberries for some reason. Anya took a deep breath, smiled and said, "Let's go."